إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونتوب إليه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أما بعد, respected elders, respected sisters and respected brothers, here we are gathered to an amazing and blessed day of Friday, coming together as a congregation to pray together, reflect together, heal together, and find answers to the difficulties of the world that we are experiencing, and find a refuge from the hardships that befall our lives. I thought that today, inshallah, one of the things that we could reflect on together was this extraordinary gift that gets given to us, which is the arrival of the cycle of time with our Hijra calendar. And it's quite an important theme to reflect on because in preparation for the research of this Khutba, quite frankly, I was struck to discover that the concept, the idea and the notion of Hijra was referenced 21 times in the Quran. So that suggests that this theme is extremely important to our institutional memory. The number provides a hint as to why it's a theme that we need to reflect on and find meaning to it whenever we have an opportunity to discuss it amongst ourselves. It would be difficult, and obviously it would not be the right use of the budget of time we have for the service to take literally each and every one of the verses and unpack them, and as such, like everything else, when we remove certain things from Allah in the Quran to be its voice, we reduce the model a little bit and we don't do it justice. So I've chosen only 2 from the 21 verses because I feel that they encapsulate a lot of the others. They do not represent that they are not one-for-one mapping to all of the others, but they encapsulate the large themes that are all reflected upon in the Quran. So the first one comes to us from Surah Ali Imran. For those of you who wish to review it later on, it's verse 195. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَالَّذِينَ هَاجَرُوا وأخرجوا من ديارهم وأوذوا في سبيلي وقاتلوا وقتلوا لأكفرن عنهم سيئاتهم ولأدخلنهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار ثوابا من عند الله والله عنده حسن الثواب. Roughly translated in English, this verse can be read like this: those who migrated or were expelled from their homes and were persecuted for my sake. In reaction, they defended themselves and lost their lives. I will forgive their sins and admit them into gardens under which rivers will flow, as a reward from Allah. And with Allah is the finest reward. This verse by itself packs a punch, and it couldn't be more relevant to talk about than today, as we experience the world, as we experience it today. SubhanAllah, it looks like it was revealed yesterday, not 1400 years ago, in terms of its narrative and in terms of its content, in defining the various parties and in explaining the position that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take from that experience. I thought the second and the last one I will use to underpin what we want to share today comes to us from Surah Al-Tawbah. And for those of you who wish to review it later on, inshallah ta'ala, it will be verse number 100. In this one, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala positions this requirement for Hijra in the following way. والسابقون الأولون من المهاجرين والأنصار والذين اتبعوهم بإحسان رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه وأعد لهم جنات تجري تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا ذلك الفوز العظيم. So to render this verse in English, it would read like this. And for those who have taken the initiative and raised the first amongst the immigrants and the first amongst the helpers, the Ansar, and those who then follow them in goodness, know this: Allah is pleased with them and they are pleased with Him. And He has prepared for them gardens in which rivers flow, to stay therein forever and ever. And that is indeed the ultimate triumph. The verses taken together, the two of them taken together, express reflection on an event and a movement that is supposed to be inherited by the Muslim Ummah. It symbolizes something that is very important about the birth of our nation and the birth of our calendar. Subhanallah al-Azim, that the events of the Muslim calendar are extraordinarily rich with things that could act as a source or a starting point. Clearly, the event of the revelation could have been the start of our calendar and our time. The birth of the Prophet ﷺ could have been the start and the beginning of our calendar. Clearly, the liberation of Mecca could have been an amazing thing to reflect on. Clearly, the emancipation of the slaves to become free men and women could have been a starting point. And yet, from that we have had, we decided to make the identity of our Ummah begin with the idea of Hijra, of migration. Why is that? Is it because we are restless and we don't feel good in our skin? Or is it because we are simply people that randomly pick something? I would submit that it's not the case, that it is very, very meaningful to have chosen the Hijra to represent the start of the cycle of our life. Why? It's because migrating from one state to the other, from one geography to the other, from one condition of a human being to the other, is a constant invitation that Islam represents dynamism and fluidity, a movement towards freedom and our better self, a quest to always look for new horizons and not settle from where we are. So we might become comfortable in a place, but we have an obligation to go and make da'wah to seek a better place. We might become comfortable with new opportunities, but it would not be sufficient to come one day and say, I've done my part, let it go. No, we have an obligation to seek other opportunities. More importantly, for times in our lives when we have been burdened with difficult choices and we lost a little bit our way, the Hijrah allows us new beginnings, turning pages so we can go to better horizons. I find this to be incredibly inspiring. SubhanAllah, if you look at the history of religion and all of the people who have picked up the start of their calendars, typically the story of the birth of a particular religious tradition is traumatic. Somebody died or some chariot came from the sky with brim and fire and whatnot. But in Islam, the option that represents how we start counting our days is a simple step, a beautiful decision to say we can go to a better place. And I think that this is incredibly inspiring and incredibly meaningful to then internalize it and put it in today's world. So why is this relevant, and why did I choose this topic amongst the many, many others that we could have spent our time dealing with? Because I believe that we are experiencing changes in the world today that are quite extraordinary in comparison to human history. And we are experiencing all of this from the front seat. History is being made, people are making choices, and here is the outcome. History is not very generous or very friendly to those who make bad decisions. Time, 100 years from now, 200 years from now, 500 years from now, will divide this world in people who have made themselves relevant and people who have made themselves irrelevant because of the choices that they have made. And let me tell you why I specifically wanted to focus on this today. Because I would argue that over the last few hundreds of years or so, Muslims have not been an exceptionally good model of making good decisions. We sit here today paying unbearable prices and burdens for bad decisions of people who have made them before us, to a never-ending saga and tragedy and catastrophe one after the other. So we don't really have, in recent memory, a lot to lean on as a role model for doing this better. But I'm a person that looks always at the glass half full. So I believe it doesn't have to be this way. I believe we have plenty of room to do better and to work in order to get and snap out of this lethargic state and get into a better condition in order to help and serve humanity in ways where hope, justice, and morality can be restored in ways that are sustainable. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran teaches us this in a beautiful way, to alert us to the fact that tragedy is not meant to be a boat anchor for the Ummah. Tragedy is meant to be an invitation to be able to find ourselves on the other side of it. Not to drown inside it, not to get lost inside it, not to develop a guilt complex, and certainly not to develop a form of surrender and acceptance of the horror that goes around us. But tragedy is meant to be a lens that allows us to look at the world and say, how can we do better? How can we do better for ourselves, for our children, for future generations to come? And I love the invitation when the voice of the Quran presents us the case in this way. Again, going back to Surah Al Imran, and this would be verse number 140, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins this verse on a low note, explaining the hardship, and then invites us to go to a high note to find hope on the other side of tragedy. So he says, إِن يَمْسَسْكُمْ قَرْحٌ فَقَدْ مَسَّ الْقَوْمَ قَرْحٌ مِثْلُهُ وتلك الأيام نداولها بين الناس وليعلم الله الذين آمنوا ويتخذ منكم شهداء والله لا يحب الظالمين. In such a beautiful construct, this verse is offered to us in the following way. Listen, he says, if you've suffered losses, they suffered similar losses. And these are the days that we alternate between good fortune and not so good fortune amongst people, so that Allah may reveal the true believers and choose those who have sacrificed for His sake from amongst you, and Allah does not like the wrongdoers. And this verse by itself puts us into this condition that at the end of the day, the starting point for any change that needs to come, cannot be at the expense of losing our moral compass. Whoever owns the higher moral ground will prevail. It's not about anything else. That's fundamentally what it is about, and that's the invitation about why we shouldn't lose our way, either under the burden of guilt or under the burden of expediency. So I thought that after finishing this introduction with these two building blocks, I'll make the second part of the khutbah an invitation for myself first, and inshallah for the rest of us, to make this a little bit practical by advising and suggesting few practical steps we can take. So I would recommend the following three ideas. The first one, there is an amazing semantic in the Quran that is associated with the use of the term insan. Actually, I recommend whenever you have a chance, please try to do that exercise. It's pretty amazing that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, anywhere when He uses insan, there is an association with the term insan as being someone that is really a creature that is work in progress. So this creature that has been created is hasty. It doesn't know how to calibrate itself to go somewhere or to do somewhere. And then subhanAllah, in the construct of the Quran, every time that there is a course correction that is put as an attribute to improve the condition of an insan, it starts with the preposition in the Arabic language that is illa, except. الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات. There is an exception. In other words, we can take the level of insan to something that becomes very pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that's the first step. The first step is to realize that all of us, without exception, we are not a gift to creation or to mankind. All of us are works in progress to varying degrees. Some Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed with amazing things. Some have really pulled their way to the right place and have had room to go somewhere else. And some are really searching in the dark in order to find their way about where to go next. But all of us, without exception, are working in order to become awake, find this voice, and invest this energy in where it needs to go in order to enter those that benefit from the exception. Why is that? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for الَّذِينَ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, the ones who have faith and who believe, He has provided them with things that are incentive to aspire to, setting them at a higher bar, asking more of them, trusting them as being custodians of the revelation, trusting them to be true followers of Adam alayhi salam, rewarding them time and again, forgiving and empowering them to do more for themselves and for others who are around them. So I chose this at the beginning because usually when the lazy months of summer come in, we have a tendency, specifically in the younger population, that when school is over, we sort of turn off our brains and we turn off other things in our lives because we are really in a period of time where this more rhythm of life becomes acceptable. Not to us. We have a lot of work in front of us where we have to invest significantly in using every opportunity, every minute of our life to transform from an insan that is like anybody else to a believer that is unlike everybody else. That is called Hijra, that's called migration. We migrate from a state that is not ideal to a state that becomes pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the first practical piece of advice. I want to share the second one to help awaken our hearts and our minds to the reality and the responsibility to be an ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and an ummah that celebrates Hijra in every facet of our life. I always find it fascinating, according to some books of Sirah, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has been presented one day with a chance to be told everything about his personal life in the future. And he refused to accept that, and he refused to have it given to him. I find this quite amazing. Like in every culture, literally every culture around the planet, there is a prototype model of the oracle that everybody goes to in order to be able to foretell them the future. Who's your life mate that you should be worried with? What the future can tell you about your children who will all become righteous. How can you find wealth when you become part of the ease of life and you don't have to work hard? Where is your success coming into the future? Everybody strives for this kind of thing because it feels like if you know that, then it will take away the burden and the hardship and the difficulty. And yet the Prophet ﷺ refused to have that be told to him. And he decided to enter life and to hack his way out of life one moment at a time, one step at a time, one victory at a time, embracing its tragedy, embracing its joy, embracing its celebration, embracing its hardship, embracing the good, embracing the not so good, and he put up through all of this. So here is the advice of the second point. We've just entered 1447 in the Hijri calendar. Where do you think you are going to migrate to if you have to ask yourself the question today? How does the future look for you if you were to put down on paper how your ideal future looks like? What do you think are the critical and important choices you need to make in your life? Much like the Prophet ﷺ, at each one of the junctures of his life, made the critical choice, but sometimes sounded like completely counterintuitive. In Surah Hudaybiyah, every historian will take you that if you took that event out of what's before it and what's after it, it wouldn't make any sense whatsoever. But it required the leadership of the Prophet ﷺ to make a decision at that moment. We don't know in the future what would that decision make for the future of the Ummah. And it turned out to be one of the pivotal moments in history. What are you going to do with your resources, your health, your knowledge, your freedom, and for you to become a gift to all of us? Because we need you, and in every respect, it's important to understand that it's not only about you, but about the impact that we all will benefit from. Because if you raise yourself, you become a treasure for all of us who live with you and who can call you our brother and our sisters. I'll come to the last point, inshallah, on which I will close. And that is something that has always fascinated me. If you actually go back to the books of Sirah and you attempt the following exercise, try to decompose the Hijra from its major themes, like the Prophet ﷺ was in Mecca, time had come for him to go, preparation had to take place, suddenly he travels, then he ends up in Medina, then success. That's certainly one way we can read history. I don't suggest you do that, especially if you have time during the summer months where you can invest yourself in reading about the tradition and the culture and the religion. Think about the accumulation of details, the very, very tiny little steps, the details that have to take in place one after one. Think about Asma bint Abu Bakr, radiallahu ta'ala anhuma. She would go home and then she would fill a little bag with food, and then she would purposefully start moving in one direction that was contrary to where they were, and then try to meet them in some place and provide them with the food in that place, and then come back and redo it again. Every step in every corner, when you take it, you will see it unpacked. That what the Hijra was, it was an accumulation of an extremely long list of very, very small steps. But when you put all of the small steps together, on the other side of it, you get the birth of a nation. Small steps bring about the birth of a nation. And the birth of that nation brought to mankind the light of guidance of this beautiful religion. But it is all an accumulation of small steps. I call that the third and the last lesson of Hijra, which is the power of small habits. Very, very tiny small habits. And we are extremely blessed in the summer months because the demographic of the people who attend this masjid gets lower. So we end up with a lot of young people in the audience. So I'm going to ask you the following thing. If you are one of those, if you are part of those who have attended today, and you are part of that younger demographic, this is the only time I'm going to ask you to focus entirely and maniacally on the few pieces of advice I'll give you. Because they are a gift to you. So here is the first very tiny habit with which you can enhance your personal hijrah to become very successful. Start your day with a prayer and reflection. And forgive me because each one of these, because of the young audience, I'm going to say it and repeat it again a few times, so inshallah it gets communicated slowly and everybody gets a chance to observe it. So what you shouldn't do when you start your day is to roll from your sleep, grab your device, and start your doom scrolling at the beginning of the day, numbing your mind, killing your heart, getting totally lost, doing something that is useless, that drains the energy and life out of you. Don't do that. So first thing, snap out, go make your wudu, a little prayer, and just sit down right there. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, it doesn't matter. And just reflect on the gifts that Allah has given you, what you want to do with your day and whatnot. Every day. That's what the power of habit. You do that every day at the beginning of the day. Second piece of advice that I would suggest, inshallah, that you do one of every single day. Make a pledge at the beginning of every day that you are going to invest in improving the literacy of your deen. Take a fact away, take an ayah, take a hadith, take a piece of history, take a line from a book, take a book, whatever you like, it doesn't matter what it is. And move your day from something you didn't know to something you know at the end of the day. One at a time. One fact per day. Whatever that is. Can take something that is incredibly magical. So why is it that we do this when we do our tasbih and we move our fingers and whatnot? Find out how the Prophet ﷺ did it. And how he moved it. And how the man that came to him and how he taught him how to make the tasbih on his head. The conversation that took place between them. And هذه فلله. فما هو لي. And there's a conversation that took place between Prophet ﷺ and this man on how to tasbih, looking at the ummah. It doesn't matter what it is, it doesn't matter what the fact is, but take one and don't leave the day before then doing a balance. At the beginning of the day, I didn't know that. At the end of the day, alhamdulillah, I know this. So that's the second piece, inshallah. The third piece, and I'm going to give you a mental one from this one so you can actually do that. Go find a piece of cloth or a napkin or a paper towel or whatever it is. Put it open in front of you and pledge at the beginning of the day that in it you're going to put a bad habit out of you into that piece of cloth or that paper towel or that napkin and whatever. Then wrap it up and go throw it in the garbage. And commit that every single day you are going to remove a bad habit from you, whatever that might be. Maybe you are a little bit rough in the way you talk to people. Maybe you are not reliable. Maybe you are someone who is constantly weighing yourself down through low self-esteem. Whatever those things are, pick one, not 100 of them at once. Pick only one and say, today I'm pledging that this is something that I will remove from my life. And I will conclude with the last two. Every single day, make an inventory of a good habit you wish you would have and you don't have it, and pledge that you will go and get it done. For example, you might have lost the taste for reading. This whole thing about being addicted to something that is constant feed to you coming electronically has taken away from you the ability to be able to sit with the book and read from the book. As a young person in this audience, you make the following pledge. If you have notification going on your device, when you get the ping of your notification, you don't grab the notification, you actually fight it. You let the notification stay where it is, and you pledge to pick up a book, open up a page or open up a chapter, and learn a good habit of getting back into reading and about appreciating books. Because the one thing that we never had in our ummah, subhanAllah, this is true of Muslim history up into recent times, the last 100 years or so. The one thing that we never had in our ummah are people who were illiterate or incompetent in things around their life. That just did not exist. All people had an incredible good level of literacy. Men and women, old and young, everybody had a certain level of proficiency that was always available to us. You think about this amazing Italian mathematician whose name is Fibonacci, and he's this mathematician that has invented this special series that describes a lot of things in nature, how the branches into a fern are organized, how seashells are organized in everything else. Does anybody know where he got his training as a mathematician in the world? He was Italian. In Hijra, in Algeria. So this guy had his father, who was Christian, who took him to a madrasa in Hijra to learn mathematics in the madrasa. Why? Because they understood the power of small habits to go and acquire them. So that's what we need to restore. And it's not that we are inventing, we are simply recovering our memory. And the last one, which is extremely important if you are one of the young people that you should acquire as a good habit, in which I'll conclude the khutbah, inshallah. Every day, pledge to do something for someone else. Not for you, not that you are the beneficiary of it, for yourself. Pledge that today I'm going to do something for someone else. Your mom, your dad, your friend, your neighbor, your soccer team. It doesn't matter who it is. But you pledge that I'm going to do something that will benefit someone else. And someone else. And inshallah ta'ala, if you do that, then we would have restored the spirit of Hijra as it was intended, and we will inshallah have given it an opportunity to come back in the spirit that it has benefited our ummah. And inshallah, in the little khutbah like today, and for those of you who are young today, and Allah is going to give inshallah ta'ala the long life in protection and in safety, you will be inshallah the next generation of the muhajirin and ansar that can restore to our ummah the honor it deserves and the respect it deserves.